Hey, what's up, guys? This is Coach Matt. Today, I had a question from a client about the alignment, especially of the shoulder, elbow, and chest as you're going down in a push-up position. So I just want to take you through some push-up technique in detail. Kind of revisiting a video I think was like one of my first videos 9 years ago, which is kind of cool. So starting off, one thing that's really important is just hand placement and hand position. So I want to go about shoulder width so that I can stack my shoulder, not just above the wrist, but slightly in front of the wrist. And why I do that is that's actually going to help me keep my elbow vertical as I go down, which is really important to get not only a good pushing in position off the ground, but to keep the shoulder in a good position and not allow the elbow to really flare out. So let me show you one really quick. So if I'm here, about shoulder width, I'm going to go slightly in front, and then as I go down, you'll see that elbow stays pretty vertical. What we tend to see a lot of times is that people will either collapse back, they'll actually like collapse inward, so the elbow, if you were looking from this angle, so if you see my elbow here, it's actually like caving in, or they sweep it out really far, especially coming up and out of the push-up. And those are ways, you're not using the muscles you're really trying to engage, the pattern we're really trying to engage. You're essentially like jamming your shoulder up in the socket and then like sweeping out and kind of using leverage that way. So not ideal, especially not long term for your shoulder. So that alignment, getting set up, elbows slightly off the sides, and then pushing back up. That's kind of piece one. Piece two then is controlling your hips. So most people, when they set up in the push-up, tend to have a little bit of an arch in their back, or they'll even like come off the ground with that arch. What we want to do is focus on squeezing the butt and engaging the core to create almost slightly rounded feeling in the low back, which is actually going to be more neutral in this position as we combat gravity. So it's just that little tuck. I'm stacked, down, and up. That's your perfect push-up, trying to maintain those elements. One other big cue that I like to give people for this alignment piece, especially at the shoulder, is I want to think about actively grabbing and pulling myself to the ground on the way down. And the reason I do that is because if I think about almost pulling myself down, I'm helping set that shoulder back in the socket so it's a better pulling position. If I don't, what we tend to see is people roll those shoulders forward, and now I'm just hanging out in the front of the shoulder where there's no meat there. There's just gristle, and that's going to get ripped up. So I want to keep it set in the back of the shoulder. So right way, as I'm here, pull down, push away. Wrong way, I have to collapse forward and then push up and away. And I've seen even high-level competitive athletes do those push-ups incorrectly. I remember in particular a lady who was training, a CrossFit coach, and was training and was banging out hundreds of reps, but she was using her shoulder mobility to essentially bounce out of the bottom every time rather than being able to really control. So I really encourage her and you to pull to the ground and then push away so you get that full range of motion at the shoulder blade. Now, how do you build up to that if you don't have that yet? A lot of people will go straight to a knee push-up, but the knee push-up, it can help. But one of the problems is it's much harder to engage the glutes here if you haven't learned that position already. So you tend to be already a little bit more biased to that extension position. So we're missing a little bit of that piece. We're also not necessarily getting the plank because my shoulders are way behind my hands. It's harder to get as much of that feeling of feeling stacked over the wrist. So it might be helpful if you have limited wrist mobility. But what I prefer to do, if I can, is elevate the hands. So I'm still in a full push-up position, but maybe I'm off of a bench or a bar or some blocks, and I'm just slowly building my way down. The second thing is doing an eccentric. So slow on the way down, as slow as you can while maintaining those elements, and then either pause or drop and rock out of it. So you'd see that would be something like this. I go down, and I'm like, okay, right here, that's as much as I got. I'm gonna drop down, let myself down smoothly, rock out, and come right back up. So give those elements a try. Think about really pulling yourself on the way down, pushing up, stacking that shoulder slightly in front of the wrist So you can keep that elbow right above the wrist throughout the movement. And then remember, it's gonna be just slightly off the side. As I go down, that's how I'm gonna really pull and set those shoulders back, rather than getting like collapsed in like this or winging out as I go back up. I hope those tips help, and let me know how it goes.